Rihanna Winters sat in her big office on the top floor of the Lux Beauty Corp building. She was only 28 years old, but she had built this company from nothing. 5 years ago, she started making beauty products in her small apartment. Now her company was worth millions of dollars and had over 500 workers. But today, Rihanna felt worried. She held a stack of papers in her hands. These papers were complaints from her workers. Someone had put them in a box outside her office door. The person did not write their name, but the complaints were serious. The papers said that some managers were mean to workers. They said workers were scared to speak up. One paper said a manager made a woman cry every day. Another said a manager took credit for other people's work. The complaint said workers wanted to quit because of bad treatment. Rihanna read each paper carefully. She felt sick to her stomach. This was not the company she wanted to build. She had always told her managers to treat workers well. She thought they were doing a good job. But these papers told a different story. She picked up her phone and called her assistant Sarah. Sarah had worked with Rihanna since the company started. She was the only person Rihanna trusted completely. "Sarah, can you come to my office right now?" Rihanna said. "Of course, Miss Winters. I'll be right there," Sarah replied. A few minutes later, Sarah walked into the office. She was a smart woman in her 30s with kind eyes. She saw the worried look on Rihanna's face. "What's wrong?" Sarah asked. Rihanna showed her the complaint papers. "Someone left these outside my door." "Sarah, if these things are true, we have a big problem." Sarah read the papers quietly. Her face became serious. "This is terrible. What are you going to do?" Rihanna stood up and walked to the big window. She looked down at the busy street below. People were walking to work, going about their normal day. Her workers were somewhere in this building, maybe suffering because of bad managers. "I need to see what's really happening," Rihanna said. "But if I walk around as the CEO, everyone will act different. They'll pretend everything is fine." Sarah nodded. "That's true. People always act perfect when the boss is around." Rihanna turned around with a determined look. "I have an idea. What if I wasn't the boss? What if I was just a regular worker?" Sarah looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what if I got a job here as a normal employee? I could see how managers really treat people. I could learn the truth." Sarah's eyes went wide. "You want to go undercover in your own company? That's crazy." Rihanna smiled for the first time that day. "Maybe it is crazy, but it might be the only way to fix this problem." They spent the next hour planning. Rihanna would pretend to be a new temporary worker named Riley Waters. She would work in the customer service department. That department had gotten many complaints, so it seemed like a good place to start. Sarah would help create fake papers for Riley Waters. She would make it look like Riley was hired through a temp agency. Sarah would also be the only person who knew the truth about Riley's real identity. "This is risky," Sarah said. "What if someone recognizes you?" Rihanna thought about this. "Most workers have never seen me up close. They might know my name but not my face, and I can change how I look." Over the next week, they prepared everything. Sarah created a fake resume for Riley Waters. The resume said Riley had worked at small companies doing basic office work. It said she needed temporary work while looking for a permanent job. Sarah also called the Human Resources Department. She pretended to be from a temp agency. She said they had a good worker available for the customer service team. The HR person said they needed extra help, so they agreed to hire Riley for a month. Rihanna practiced being Riley Waters. She changed her voice to sound less confident. She practiced walking differently. She bought simple clothes from regular stores instead of expensive designer clothes. She got a cheap haircut and bought glasses she didn't need. The hardest part was acting like she didn't know about the business. Rihanna knew everything about Lux Beauty Corp. She knew all the products, all the procedures, and all the company history. Riley Waters was supposed to know nothing. Sarah helped her practice. "What does this company do?" Sarah asked. "They make beauty products," Rihanna answered, trying to sound unsure. "Like makeup and skincare stuff, I think." "Good. And why do you want to work here?" "Because I need a job and this one pays okay." They practiced for hours. Rihanna learned to act like someone who just needed any job to pay bills. It was strange pretending to not care about the company she built. The night before starting her undercover job, Rihanna felt nervous. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked completely different from the CEO who wore expensive suits and confident smiles. Riley Waters looked like any regular person looking for work. Sarah came to her apartment to help with final preparations. Are you sure about this? She asked. Rihanna nodded. I have to do this. If my workers are being treated badly, I need to know. And I need to know which managers are causing problems. What if it gets dangerous? What if someone finds out who you really are? Then we'll deal with it. But Sarah, I can't run a company if I don't know what's really happening in it. Sarah helped her put together a simple lunch and old purse that looked like something a temporary worker would carry. They went over the plan one more time. Rihanna would start work at 8 in the morning. She would report to Marcus Thompson, the customer service manager. According to her research, Marcus had worked at the company for 3 years. He had good numbers, but some complaints mentioned his name. Remember, Sarah said, I'm the only one who knows who you really are. Don't try to contact me unless it's an emergency. Act like you've never met me before. I understand, Rihanna said. That night, Rihanna couldn't sleep well. She kept thinking about what she might discover. Part of her hoped the complaints were wrong or exaggerated. But another part of her was prepared to find out that some of her managers were treating workers badly. She thought about her workers going home tired and upset because of mean managers. She thought about good people quitting because they couldn't take the treatment anymore. This made her more determined to go through with the plan. When morning came, Rihanna dressed in simple clothes and looked at herself one last time. Today, she was not the CEO of Lux Beauty Corp. Today, she was Riley Waters, a temporary worker who just needed a job. She grabbed her simple lunch and old purse. It was time to discover the truth about her own company. Riley Waters walked into the Lux Beauty Corp building at 7:45 in the morning. She felt strange entering her own company as a stranger. The security guard asked for her ID and temporary worker badge. Sarah had arranged everything perfectly. First day? The guard asked with a friendly smile. Yes, Riley replied, trying to sound nervous like a real new employee would. Good luck. Take the elevator to the 3rd floor. Customer service is down the hall to the right. Riley thanked him and got in the elevator. As the doors closed, she took a deep breath. She was really doing this. In a few minutes, she would meet her employees as one of them. The elevator opened on the 3rd floor. Riley could hear phones ringing and people talking. She followed the signs to the customer service department. Through glass doors, she could see rows of desks with people answering phones and typing on computers. Riley opened the door and walked in. A few people looked up at her, then went back to their work. She stood there for a moment, not sure where to go. Finally, a woman with gray hair and kind eyes walked over to her. You must be the new temp, the woman said with a smile. I'm Janet. I've been here for 8 years. Hi, I'm Riley. Nice to meet you, Riley said, feeling relieved that someone was being friendly. Let me show you to Marcus's office. He's our manager. He'll get you set up. Janet led Riley to a corner office with glass walls. Inside, a man in his 40s was sitting behind a desk, talking loudly on the phone. He had dark hair and wore an expensive suit. Riley could see him through the glass, waving his hands as he talked. That's Marcus Thompson, Janet whispered. Well, you'll see. They waited outside the office. Riley could hear Marcus through the glass. I don't care what the customer says, Marcus was saying into the phone. Our policy is clear. If they don't like it, they can shop somewhere else. Riley felt uncomfortable. That didn't sound like good customer service. At Lux Beauty Corp, customers were supposed to be treated with respect and care. Marcus hung up the phone and saw them waiting. He motioned for them to come in. Janet knocked and opened the door. Marcus, this is Riley Waters, the new temporary worker, Janet said. Marcus looked Riley up and down slowly. His eyes were cold and unfriendly. He didn't smile or stand up to greet her. So you're the temp, he said. I hope you're better than the last one. The agency sent me someone completely useless last month. Riley felt her face get hot, but she tried to stay calm. I'll do my best, sir. Sir? I like that. At least you have some manners. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Let me be clear about something. I run a tight ship here. We have rules and everyone follows them. No exceptions. Janet shifted uncomfortably next to Riley. Marcus continued. First rule, be here exactly at 8 a.m. Not 8:01, not 8:05. 8 a.m. sharp. If you're late, you're in trouble. I understand, Riley said. Second rule, no personal phone calls during work time. I don't care if your grandmother is dying. You wait until break time. Riley nodded, even though she thought this rule was too harsh. Third rule, you do what I tell you to do, when I tell you to do it. I don't want to hear excuses or suggestions. You're here to work, not to think. Marcus stood up and walked around his desk. He was tall and used his height to make people feel small. Riley had to look up at him. Janet, show her where to sit. Get her logged into the computer system. I want her answering phones by 9 a.m. Of course, Janet said quickly. Marcus looked at Riley again. One more thing. I looked at your resume. You don't have much experience with beauty products. Why did the agency send you here? Riley had prepared for this question. I'm willing to learn and I need the work. I'll study the products in my free time. Marcus laughed, but it wasn't a friendly laugh. Your free time? You won't have much of that if you work for me. This job isn't a vacation. I didn't expect it to be, Riley said, trying to keep her voice steady. Good. Janet, get her started, and make sure she knows that if she doesn't work out, she'll be gone by the end of the week. Janet quickly led Riley out of the office. As soon as they were away from Marcus's door, Janet's shoulders relaxed. I'm sorry about that, Janet whispered. He's always like that with new people. Always? Riley asked. He wants to scare people on their first day. He thinks it makes them work harder. Janet showed Riley to a desk near the back of the room. It was small and squeezed between two other desks. The computer was old and the chair was uncomfortable. This is your workspace, Janet said. I know it's not much, but it's what we have. Riley sat down and looked around. She could see the other workers at their desks. Some were talking to customers on the phone. Others were typing emails. Everyone looked stressed and tired. Let me introduce you to some people, Janet said. They walked over to a young man who looked about 25. He had short brown hair and was wearing a cheap shirt that was a little too big for him. Kevin. This is Riley, our new temp, Janet said. Kevin looked up and smiled, but Riley could see worry in his eyes. Hi, Riley, welcome to the team. Thanks. How long have you been here? Riley asked. About 6 months, Kevin said. I'm still learning too. Kevin is doing great, Janet said encouragingly. He's one of our best phone agents. Kevin looked around nervously as if he was afraid someone might hear the compliment. Next, Janet introduced Riley to Maria, a woman in her 30s with 2 kids. Maria seemed tired and kept checking the clock on her computer. Nice to meet you, Maria said quickly. Sorry, I can't talk long. Marcus times our phone calls. If we're not on the phone enough, we get in trouble. Riley was shocked. Timing phone calls seemed like a way to stress workers unnecessarily. Janet showed Riley how to log into the computer system and where to find information about Lux Beauty Corp products. Riley had to pretend she didn't know anything about her own company's products. These are our main product lines, Janet explained, pointing to the computer screen. Skincare, makeup, and hair care. If customers ask questions you can't answer, you can ask me or look it up in the database. Riley nodded and tried to look like she was learning something new. At exactly 9 a.m., Marcus's voice came over the office intercom system. Attention, everyone. Phone lines are now open. I want to see good numbers today. Remember, happy customers buy more products, but don't waste time on difficult customers. Move them along quickly. Riley put on her headset and waited for her first call. She felt nervous, not because she didn't know how to do the job, but because she was afraid of making a mistake that would blow her cover. The phone rang, and Riley answered. Thank you for calling Lux Beauty Corp. This is Riley. How can I help you today? The customer wanted to know about a face cream that had broken her out in a rash. Riley knew this product well. It was one of her company's best sellers, but some people were allergic to one of the ingredients. I'm so sorry that happened, Riley said sincerely. Let me help you with a return and find a product that will work better for your skin type. She spent 15 minutes helping the customer. She arranged a full refund and recommended a different product for sensitive skin. The customer was very happy and said she would continue shopping with Lux Beauty Corp. After Riley hung up, she felt good about helping someone. But then she noticed Marcus standing behind her desk. He didn't look pleased. 15 minutes for one call? Marcus said loudly. That's way too long. Other people are waiting. Riley looked around and saw that other workers were staring. She felt embarrassed. The customer had a problem and I wanted to make sure she was satisfied, Riley explained. I don't care if she was satisfied. I care about how many calls you take per hour. 15 minutes per call means you'll only take 4 calls in an hour. That's unacceptable. But she's going to keep buying from us because I helped her, Riley said. Marcus's face turned red. Don't argue with me. I've been doing this job since before you even knew this company existed. Keep your calls under 5 minutes or you won't be here long. He walked away, leaving Riley feeling confused and upset. She had always taught her managers that good customer service was more important than speed. But Marcus seemed to care only about numbers. The rest of the morning was difficult. Every time Riley tried to really help a customer, she worried about taking too long. She saw other workers rushing through calls, sometimes hanging up on people who had complicated questions. During her lunch break, Riley sat alone and thought about what she had learned so far. Marcus Thompson was exactly the kind of manager she didn't want in her company. He was rude, intimidating, and cared more about numbers than customers or workers. But this was only her first day. Riley knew she needed to see more before making any big decisions. She had to be patient and gather more evidence. When she came back from lunch, she was ready to continue her undercover mission. Over the next 2 weeks, Riley learned more about working under Marcus Thompson than she ever wanted to know. Every day brought new examples of his bad management style. Riley started keeping notes in a small notebook that she hid in her purse. On her 5th day, Riley watched Marcus humiliate Kevin in front of the whole team. Kevin had taken a call from an angry customer who wanted to return a product that was 6 months old. The company policy said returns were only allowed within 30 days, but Kevin tried to help anyway. "Kevin, come to my office right now," Marcus announced loudly over the intercom. Everyone in the office stopped working and looked toward Marcus's office. Through the glass walls, they could see Marcus pointing his finger at Kevin and yelling. Kevin's face turned red and his hands were shaking. After 10 minutes, Kevin came out of the office looking like he might cry. He sat at his desk and didn't talk to anyone for the rest of the day. During lunch, Riley sat with Kevin and Janet in the break room. "What happened in there?" Janet asked quietly. Kevin looked around to make sure no one else could hear. He said, "I was stupid for trying to help that customer. He said if I can't follow simple rules, maybe I'm not smart enough for this job." "That's awful," Riley said. "You were just trying to be helpful." "Marcus doesn't care about being helpful," Janet said sadly. "He only cares about following rules exactly, even when the rules don't make sense," Kevin sighed. "I need this job. I have student loans to pay, but I don't know how much more of this I can take." Riley felt angry listening to this. Kevin was a good worker who cared about customers. Marcus was destroying his confidence for no good reason. The next week, Riley witnessed Marcus taking credit for his team's success. The customer service department had received praise from the company's main office for solving a big problem with a product shipment. The team had worked extra hours to call every affected customer and fix their orders. During the monthly team meeting, Marcus stood in front of everyone and smiled. "I'm proud to announce that our department received recognition from corporate," Marcus said. "My leadership and planning made this success possible. This shows what can happen when everyone follows my system." Riley looked around the room. Janet, Kevin, Maria, and the other workers had done all the actual work. They had stayed late, made hundreds of phone calls, and dealt with angry customers. But Marcus was taking all the credit. After the meeting, Riley heard workers talking quietly. "We did all the work. And he acts like it was his idea," Maria whispered to another worker. "That's nothing new," the other worker replied. "He always does that." Riley added this to her notebook. Marcus not only treated workers badly, but he also stole credit for their hard work. The worst thing Riley saw happened during her 3rd week. A new worker named Lisa started in the department. Lisa was young, maybe 22, and this was her first office job. She was excited and wanted to do well. On Lisa's 2nd day, she made a small mistake. She forgot to ask a customer for their order number before looking up their account. It took an extra minute to find the information. Marcus called Lisa to his office after the call. Riley and the others watched through the glass walls as Marcus yelled at Lisa for 5 minutes. When Lisa came out, she was crying. "It was just a tiny mistake," Lisa said to Janet. "I'll remember next time." "Marcus doesn't believe in second chances," Janet said gently. For the next week, Marcus watched everything Lisa did. He criticized her for taking too long to answer the phone, for being too friendly with customers, and for asking questions when she didn't understand something. "Maybe you're not cut out for this kind of work," Marcus told Lisa in front of everyone on Friday afternoon. Lisa quit that same day. She left crying and said she never wanted to work in an office again. Riley felt sick watching this happen. Lisa could have been a good worker with proper training and encouragement. Instead, Marcus had destroyed her confidence and made her think she wasn't capable of doing the job. Riley also noticed that Marcus treated some workers differently than others. There was a worker named Brad who could do almost anything without getting in trouble. Brad took long lunch breaks, made personal phone calls during work time, and was often rude to customers. But Marcus never said anything to him. Riley figured out why when she heard Brad and Marcus talking about sports and going to bars together after work. Brad was Marcus's friend, so he got special treatment. Meanwhile, workers like Janet, who had been with the company for 8 years and knew everything about the products, were treated like they didn't matter. Marcus ignored Janet's suggestions and acted like her experience was worthless. During her 3rd week, Riley saw Marcus lie to his boss. The regional manager came to visit and asked Marcus about employee satisfaction in his department. "My team loves working here," Marcus said with a big smile. "We have great teamwork and high morale. I make sure everyone feels valued and appreciated." Riley almost couldn't believe what she was hearing. The regional manager walked around the office for a few minutes, but Marcus stayed close to him the whole time. Workers didn't get a chance to speak privately. After the regional manager left, Marcus called a team meeting. "I want everyone to remember that we're one big happy family here," Marcus said. "If anyone from corporate asks questions, I expect you to be positive and supportive." Riley understood this as a threat. Marcus was telling workers not to complain about him to higher management. That afternoon, Riley overheard a conversation between Janet and Maria in the bathroom. "I can't take much more of this," Maria said. "I dread coming to work every day." "I know," Janet replied, "but jobs are hard to find. I have bills to pay. My friend Sarah works at a different company. She says her manager actually cares about the workers. Can you imagine that? I used to love this job," Janet said sadly. "The company makes good products and I like helping customers, but Marcus makes everything miserable." Riley felt terrible hearing this. These were good workers who wanted to do well, but Marcus was making their lives difficult. She also learned that Marcus played favorites in other ways. When good projects came up, he gave them to his friends like Brad. When difficult or boring work needed to be done, he gave it to workers he didn't like. Kevin always got the worst customers, the ones who were very angry or had complicated problems. Maria got stuck with data entry work that wasn't even part of her job description. Janet, despite her experience, was never asked to train new workers or help with special projects. Riley noticed that Marcus also made up rules that didn't exist in the company handbook. He told workers they couldn't leave their desks during work time, even to get water. He said personal conversations were forbidden even during break time. He made people ask permission to use the bathroom, but the written company policies that Riley had created as CEO were much more reasonable. Workers were supposed to have flexibility and be treated with respect. The more Riley saw, the more angry she became. Marcus was creating a toxic environment that went against everything she believed in. He was bullying workers, lying to his bosses, and making people hate their jobs. She started timing how often Marcus actually did useful work. Most of his day was spent watching other people, criticizing their work, or talking to his friends. He rarely answered customer calls himself or helped solve difficult problems. During her 3rd week, Riley also discovered that Marcus was wasting company money. He ordered expensive office supplies that no one needed. He took long lunches at expensive restaurants and put them on his company credit card. He had his office redecorated twice in 1 year. Meanwhile, workers had to use old computers that ran slowly and chairs that were falling apart. When Janet asked for a new headset because hers was breaking, Marcus said the budget didn't allow for new equipment. Riley wrote everything down in her notebook. She had page after page of examples showing that Marcus was a terrible manager who hurt both workers and the company. But she also discovered something else that worried her. Marcus wasn't the only bad manager. At Lux Beauty Corp, she heard workers talking about problems in other departments too. The warehouse manager apparently yelled at workers and made them work in unsafe conditions. The accounting manager was known for making people work unpaid overtime. The marketing manager took credit for other people's ideas and blamed them when things went wrong. Riley realized that the anonymous complaints she had received were just the beginning. Her company had a much bigger problem than she had thought. She decided she needed to stay undercover longer than planned. 1 month wouldn't be enough to understand how widespread the problem was. She needed to gather enough evidence to fix everything that was wrong. But first she had to deal with Marcus Thompson, Riley was starting to form a plan for how to handle him, but she needed to be careful. She couldn't let her anger show, or she might blow her cover before gathering enough evidence. Riley closed her notebook and got ready for another day of watching Marcus destroy the workplace culture she had worked so hard to build. Riley's breaking point came during her 4th week undercover. She had watched Marcus bully workers, take credit for their work, and create a toxic environment. But what happened to Janet on that Tuesday morning made Riley forget about staying hidden. It started with a customer complaint that came through email. Mrs. Henderson, a loyal customer for 3 years, was upset about a lipstick that had broken in half when she opened it. She had ordered it as a gift for her daughter's graduation, and now it was ruined. Janet handled Mrs. Henderson's account and had helped her many times before. She immediately replied to the email, apologizing for the problem and offering to send a replacement lipstick overnight for free. Janet also included a discount code for Mrs. Henderson's next purchase. This was exactly the kind of customer service that Riley had always encouraged. Take care of loyal customers, fix problems quickly, and make sure people stayed happy with the company. But 20 minutes later, Mrs. Henderson called the customer service line, still upset. She had gotten Janet's email, but she wanted to speak to someone directly. The call was randomly assigned to Brad, Marcus's friend. Brad didn't bother to check the account notes or see that Janet had already solved the problem. He was in a bad mood and didn't want to deal with a complaining customer. "Look, lady," Brad said rudely. "Stuff breaks sometimes. That's not our fault. You probably dropped it or something." Mrs. Henderson was shocked. "Excuse me? I just opened the package. The lipstick was broken when I took it out." "Yeah, right," Brad said. "Everyone says that when they want free stuff. We can't replace every product that customers claim is broken." Mrs. Henderson asked to speak to a manager. Brad transferred her to Marcus without explaining what the call was about. Marcus answered his phone in an annoyed voice. "This is Marcus. What's the problem?" Mrs. Henderson, now very angry, explained the whole situation. She told Marcus about the broken lipstick, Janet's helpful email, and Brad's rude treatment. Instead of apologizing for Brad's behavior, Marcus got defensive. He called Janet into his office while Mrs. Henderson was still on the phone. "Janet, did you promise this customer a free replacement?" Marcus asked loudly so Mrs. Henderson could hear. "Yes, I did. She's been a loyal customer for years and the product was damaged," Janet explained. "You don't have authority to give away free products," Marcus said. "You should have asked me first." Janet looked confused. "But the customer service manual says we can replace defective products. I've been doing this for 8 years. "Don't argue with me," Marcus snapped. Then he spoke to Mrs. Henderson. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we can't replace your lipstick for free. You'll need to buy a new one if you want a replacement." Mrs. Henderson couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Your employee already promised me a replacement. She sent me an email 20 minutes ago. That employee made a mistake. She doesn't speak for the company," Marcus said. Riley listened to this conversation from her desk and felt her blood pressure rising. Marcus was making the company look terrible and humiliating Janet at the same time. Mrs. Henderson hung up in anger, saying she would never shop with Lux Beauty Corp again and would tell all her friends about the poor treatment. After the call, Marcus kept Janet in his office for 30 minutes. Through the glass walls, everyone could see him yelling at her. Janet kept her head down and didn't say anything back. When Janet finally came out of the office, her eyes were red from crying. She sat at her desk and tried to get back to work, but her hands were shaking. Riley couldn't take it anymore. She had watched Marcus hurt too many good people. She walked over to Janet's desk. "Are you okay?" Riley asked quietly. Janet wiped her eyes quickly. "I'm fine. Just had a rough meeting with Marcus." "What you did for that customer was right," Riley said. "You followed company policy and tried to help someone." "Marcus says I was wrong," Janet replied. "Maybe I don't understand the rules as well as I thought. You've been here for 8 years. You know the rules better than anyone," Riley said firmly. Other workers nearby started listening to the conversation. Kevin walked over and so did Maria. "Janet's the best at customer service," Kevin said. "She taught me everything I know." "Marcus just likes to make people feel bad," Maria added. "It's not your fault, Janet." Riley felt good seeing the workers support each other, but she knew this wasn't enough. She made a decision that she knew was risky. "I think we should talk to someone above Marcus," Riley said. Everyone looked shocked. They had never heard a new temporary worker suggest something so bold. That's dangerous, Janet whispered. Marcus will fire anyone who complains about him. He can't fire all of us, Riley said. And what he did to you wasn't fair. The customer had a real problem and you solved it correctly. Riley, you don't understand, Kevin said nervously. This is just how things work here. Marcus has been here for 3 years and no one has ever successfully complained about him. Maybe that's because no one has tried hard enough, Riley replied. The group talked quietly for a few more minutes before returning to their desks. Riley could see that her co-workers were thinking about what she had said, but they were too scared to take action. Later that afternoon, Marcus called another one of his impromptu meetings. These meetings always meant trouble for someone. I want to talk about following procedures, Marcus announced to the group. Some people think they can make their own rules and give away company products without permission. He looked directly at Janet as he spoke. Janet's face turned red with embarrassment. When customers complain, you need to think about what's best for the company, not what's easiest for the customer, Marcus continued. We're not a charity. We're here to make money. Riley felt her anger building. Marcus was teaching the opposite of good customer service. He was telling workers to care more about money than about helping people. Customer loyalty is important too, Riley said before she could stop herself. The room went completely quiet. Everyone turned to look at Riley. Marcus's face showed surprise and anger. Excuse me? Marcus said. Riley knew she had stepped over a line, but she couldn't back down now. I said customer loyalty is important. If we treat good customers badly, they'll shop somewhere else. Then we lose more money than the cost of replacing one lipstick. Marcus walked closer to Riley's chair. He was using his height to try to intimidate her, just like he did with everyone else. You've been here for less than a month, Marcus said coldly. You don't know anything about running a business or managing customers. I know that losing a 3-year customer because of a $5 lipstick doesn't make business sense, Riley replied. She could see her co-workers looking nervous. They had never seen anyone stand up to Marcus like this. And I suppose you think you know better than me? Marcus asked sarcastically. Riley took a deep breath. She had to be careful not to reveal too much knowledge about business or the company. I just think we should focus on keeping customers happy. Happy customers tell their friends about us. Angry customers tell everyone about bad experiences. That's very idealistic, Marcus said with a fake smile. But this is the real world. In the real world, we have budgets and policies for a reason. Janet followed the policy, Riley said. The customer service manual says we can replace defective products. Marcus's smile disappeared. Don't tell me what the manual says. I know the manual better than some temporary worker who just got here. Riley wanted to tell him that she had written that manual herself, but she couldn't. Instead, she said, maybe we should look at the manual together to make sure we're all following the same rules. This suggestion made Marcus even angrier. He didn't like being challenged, especially in front of his team. You need to learn your place here, Marcus said loudly. You're a temporary worker. You answer phones and follow orders. You don't make suggestions about company policy or question management decisions. I'm just trying to help, Riley said. I don't want your help. I want you to do your job and keep your opinions to yourself. Marcus looked around the room at all the workers. This goes for everyone. I don't want to hear any more suggestions or complaints about how we do things here. If you don't like our procedures, you can find another job. After the meeting, Riley felt bad about putting her co-workers in an uncomfortable position, but she also felt good about finally standing up to Marcus. Janet came over to her desk after Marcus went back to his office. Thank you for defending me, Janet said quietly. No one has ever done that before. You didn't deserve to be treated that way, Riley replied. Be careful, though, Janet warned. Marcus doesn't forget when people challenge him. He'll be watching you even more closely now. Riley nodded. She knew Janet was right. She had made herself a target by speaking up. But she couldn't regret defending a good worker who was being treated unfairly. That evening, Riley went home and called Sarah to give her an update on the undercover investigation. This Marcus situation is worse than we thought, Riley told Sarah. He's destroying morale and driving away good customers. We need to document everything and build a case for his removal. Just be careful, Sarah said. If he figures out who you are before you're ready to reveal yourself, it could cause bigger problems. Riley knew Sarah was right, but she also knew she couldn't watch Marcus hurt more people without doing something about it. Marcus Thompson was not the kind of man who forgot when someone challenged him. After Riley defended Janet in front of the whole team, Marcus decided he needed to put the new temporary worker in her place. He spent the weekend thinking about how to teach Riley a lesson that everyone would remember. Monday morning arrived with gray clouds and rain. The weather matched the dark mood in the customer service department. Marcus had arrived early and was sitting in his office, waiting for the right moment to execute his plan. Riley came to work at her usual time, 7:55 a.m. She had learned to arrive a few minutes early because Marcus enjoyed catching people who were even 1 minute late. She sat at her desk and started preparing for another day of answering phones and watching Marcus mistreat her coworkers. At 9 a.m. sharp, Marcus's voice came over the intercom. "Riley Waters, come to my office immediately." Riley felt her stomach drop. She could see through the glass walls that Marcus was holding a folder and had papers spread across his desk. This looked like trouble. She knocked on his door and waited for permission to enter. "Sit down," Marcus said without looking up from his papers. Riley sat in the uncomfortable chair across from his desk. Marcus continued reading for 2 full minutes, making her wait in silence. This was one of his favorite intimidation tactics. Finally, Marcus looked up with a cold smile. "I have a special project for you today," he said, "something that will really test your abilities." He slid a thick folder across the desk to Riley. When she opened it, her heart sank. Inside were hundreds of customer complaint forms that needed to be entered into the computer system. Each form required detailed data entry with multiple fields and special codes. "These complaints came in over the weekend," Marcus explained. "They all need to be entered into our database by 5 p.m. today. No exceptions." Riley quickly flipped through the papers. There had to be at least 300 forms. Even working at top speed, this would normally take 2 full days for an experienced data entry person. "This seems like a lot for one day," Riley said carefully. Marcus's smile got bigger. "Are you saying you can't handle it? Because if this job is too difficult for you, I can call the temp agency and ask for someone more capable." Riley understood what was happening. Marcus was setting her up to fail. He had given her an impossible task so he could justify firing her when she couldn't complete it. "I'll do my best," Riley said. "Your best had better be good enough," Marcus replied. "And just so we're clear, you can't ask other workers for help. This is your project alone. Everyone else has their own work to do." Riley returned to her desk with the heavy folder. She could feel everyone watching her as she sat down and opened the first complaint form. The task was even worse than she had thought. The forms were handwritten and difficult to read writing, and many of them were incomplete or confusing. Janet came over during her break to see what Riley was working on. "Oh no," Janet whispered when she saw the complaint forms. "He's giving you the weekend backlog? That's supposed to be shared among the whole team." "He said I have to finish it all by 5 p.m., Riley said. "That's impossible," Janet replied.
"Even with 3 people working on it, that would take all day." Kevin walked over and saw the pile of papers.
He did the same thing to Lisa before she quit. Gave her an impossible job, and then acted like she was incompetent when she couldn't finish it. Riley realized that this was Marcus's standard method for getting rid of workers he didn't like. Give them a task that couldn't be completed, then blame them for failing. "Is there any way to do this faster?" Riley asked. "The computer system is really slow," Kevin explained. "Each form takes about 5 minutes to enter properly. You'd need 30 hours to finish all of those." Riley looked at the clock. It was 9:30 a.m. She had 7.5 hours until 5 p.m. Even if she worked without taking any breaks, she couldn't possibly finish. She decided to start working and see how much she could get done. Maybe if she completed a significant portion, she could argue that she had done a good job under impossible circumstances. For the next 3 hours, Riley worked steadily. The data entry was tedious and required careful attention to detail. Customer names had to be spelled exactly right. Product codes had to match the company database. Complaint categories had to be selected from a drop-down menu with dozens of options. By lunchtime, Riley had completed only 47 forms. At this rate, she would finish about 120 forms by 5 p.m. That would leave more than half the work undone. During her lunch break, Riley sat alone and thought about her situation. She could reveal her true identity and end this charade right now. As CEO, she could fire Marcus immediately and solve the problem. But Riley knew that would be the easy way out. If she revealed herself now, she wouldn't learn everything she needed to know about the problems in her company. Marcus would be gone, but other bad managers might continue hurting workers in different departments. She decided to stick with her plan and see this through to the end, even if it meant being fired from her own company. When Riley returned from lunch, she found that Marcus had made her situation even worse. He had placed a timer on her desk that counted down to 5 p.m. The red numbers showed exactly how much time she had left. 4 hours and 17 minutes. "I thought this might help you stay focused," Marcus said loudly so everyone could hear. Nothing motivates people like a good deadline. Several coworkers looked over sympathetically, but they couldn't help without getting in trouble themselves. Riley continued working through the afternoon. Her back ached from hunching over the computer. Her eyes hurt from staring at handwritten forms with messy writing. Her fingers were tired from typing endless customer information. At 3 p.m., Marcus walked over to check her progress. "How many have you finished?" he asked. 83, Riley answered. Marcus made a show of counting the remaining forms in the folder. "So you have about 220 left with 2 hours to go. You'll need to work much faster if you want to finish on time." He said this loud enough for everyone to hear. Riley could see that her coworkers felt bad for her, but they couldn't do anything to help. At 4 p.m., Marcus made an announcement over the intercom. "I want everyone to pay attention to Riley's workstation. She's working on a very important project with a strict deadline. This is a good example of the kind of dedication and efficiency we expect from all employees." Riley felt humiliated. Marcus was using her as an example, knowing that she couldn't possibly meet his impossible deadline. He was setting her up for public failure. As 4:30 approached, Riley had completed 138 forms. She was working as fast as possible, but the timer on her desk showed she only had 30 minutes left. At 4:45, Marcus walked over with a satisfied smile. 15 minutes left, he announced. "How are we doing?" "I've finished 142, Riley said. 142 out of 310, Marcus said, making sure everyone could hear the numbers. "That's less than half. Not very impressive for someone who thinks they know so much about customer service." Riley kept working, but she knew it was hopeless. At 5 p.m., she had completed 157 forms. More than half the work remained unfinished. Marcus walked over with several other workers following behind him. He wanted an audience for Riley's failure. "Time's up," Marcus announced dramatically. "Let's see how you did." He made a show of counting the remaining forms in the folder. 153 forms still unfinished, Marcus said, shaking his head. "That's completely unacceptable. A competent worker would have found a way to finish the job." Riley looked up at him calmly. The task was impossible to complete in one day. Even working at maximum speed, this would require at least 2 full days. "Excuses," Marcus said dismissively. "A good employee finds solutions, not excuses." He looked around at the other workers who had gathered to watch. "This is what happens when people think they're smarter than their managers," Marcus continued. "They take on responsibilities they can't handle, and then they blame everyone except themselves when they fail." Riley felt anger building inside her, but she tried to stay calm. "I worked for 7.5 hours without breaks," she said. "I completed more than half of an impossible task." "Impossible?" Marcus laughed. "Nothing is impossible if you work hard enough and smart enough. You just weren't up to the challenge." He picked up the folder of unfinished forms. "Because you failed to complete this assignment, I'm going to have to assign it to other workers who will have to stay late to fix your mistake." "That's not fair to them, is it?" Riley realized that Marcus was planning to punish the other workers for her failure. This was even worse than she had expected. "Don't blame them for my work," Riley said quickly. "I'm not blaming them," Marcus replied with fake innocence. "I'm blaming you. But someone has to finish this work, and it can't be you since you've already proven you're not capable." Janet stepped forward. "Marcus, that's not fair. Riley worked hard all day. No one could have finished that much work in one day." "Are you questioning my judgment, Janet?" Marcus asked dangerously. Janet backed down immediately. "No, sir." "I'm sorry," Marcus smiled triumphantly. He had successfully intimidated Janet and was about to humiliate Riley in front of everyone. The words hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Marcus Thompson had just fired Riley Waters in front of the entire customer service team. He stood there with his arms crossed, looking satisfied with himself. This was his favorite part of being a manager, the moment when he could show everyone who had the real power. "You're fired," Marcus repeated, wanting to make sure everyone heard him clearly. "Pack your things and leave the building within 1 hour." Riley looked around the room at her co-workers. Janet had tears in her eyes. Kevin looked shocked and angry. Maria was staring at the floor, probably thinking she might be next. The other workers stood frozen, afraid to move or speak. "Did you hear me?" Marcus asked when Riley didn't immediately respond. "I said you're fired. That means you need to start packing." "I heard you," Riley said calmly. "I just want to make sure I understand correctly. You're firing me because I couldn't complete an impossible task in an unrealistic time frame." Marcus's face turned red. Even after firing her, Riley was still challenging him. "I'm firing you because you're incompetent, disrespectful, and not a good fit for this company," Marcus said loudly. "You've been nothing but trouble since the day you started." "What kind of trouble?" Riley asked. "Don't play dumb," Marcus snapped. "You questioned my decisions, argued about company policies, and disrupted team meetings with your inappropriate comments." Riley nodded slowly. "So you're firing me for standing up for Janet when you humiliated her unfairly, and for suggesting that we should focus on customer satisfaction instead of just following rigid rules. I'm firing you for having a bad attitude and thinking you know better than management," Marcus replied. The other workers were watching this conversation like it was a tennis match. They had never seen anyone continue to challenge Marcus after being fired. "I see," Riley said. "So in your opinion, a good employee should never question anything, never offer suggestions, and never defend their coworkers when they're being treated unfairly." "Exactly," Marcus said triumphantly. "Finally, you understand how things work here." Riley looked around the room one more time. She saw workers who were scared, defeated, and miserable. These were good people who deserved better leadership. They deserved a manager who supported them, encouraged them, and helped them succeed. "You know what's interesting, Marcus?" Riley said, her voice getting stronger. "I've learned a lot about leadership during my time here." "Oh, really?" Marcus said sarcastically. "And what wisdom do you have to share?" "I've learned that there are two kinds of managers," Riley continued. "There are managers who build people up and managers who tear people down. There are managers who take responsibility when things go wrong, and managers who blame everyone else. There are managers who share credit for successes and managers who steal all the credit for themselves." Marcus was getting more annoyed by the second. "Are you trying to lecture me about management? You're a temporary worker who just got fired for incompetence." "I'm just making observations," Riley said. "I've also learned that the best companies are built by people who care about their customers and their employees. Companies fail when managers care more about their own power than about doing what's right." "That's enough," Marcus said angrily. "I don't need career advice from someone who couldn't even handle basic data entry." Riley smiled for the first time since being fired. "You're right, Marcus. You definitely don't need advice from me." She walked over to her desk and started putting her few personal items into her purse. The notebook where she had documented all of Marcus's bad behavior. The pen she had brought from home. A small water bottle. As she packed, Marcus continued his victory speech to the assembled workers. "Let this be a lesson to everyone," Marcus announced. "This company has standards, and we expect all employees to meet those standards. We don't tolerate laziness, disrespect, or people who think they're too good to follow orders." Janet couldn't stay quiet anymore. Riley worked harder than anyone. She helped customers better than most people here. "Janet, you're walking on thin ice," Marcus warned. "Don't make me question your judgment too." Janet immediately backed down, but Riley could see the anger in her eyes. Kevin spoke up next. "The data entry task was impossible. No one could have finished it in one day." "Kevin, do you want to join Riley in the unemployment line?" Marcus asked threateningly. Kevin fell silent, but his hands were clenched into fists. Marcus turned back to Riley, who was finishing packing her things. "Before you leave," Marcus said with a cruel smile, "I want you to apologize to the team for wasting their time and disrupting their work environment." Riley looked up at him. "Apologize for what exactly?" "For being a troublemaker. For questioning my authority. For making everyone's job harder with your attitude problems." Riley stood up and looked around the room at all the workers. These people had become her friends over the past month. They had shared their frustrations, their fears, and their hopes with her. They deserved to know that someone cared about them. "I'm not going to apologize for standing up for what's right," Riley said clearly. "I'm not going to apologize for defending good workers who were being treated unfairly. And I'm not going to apologize for suggesting that customers should be treated with respect and care." Marcus was so angry that his face was turning purple. "You have some nerve talking to me like that. Security is going to escort you out of this building and you'll never work in this industry again." "That's fine with me," Riley said calmly. "I'd rather be unemployed than work for someone who treats people the way you do." She picked up her purse and looked around the room one last time. "Janet, you're an amazing worker with incredible knowledge and experience. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Kevin, you care about customers and you work hard. That makes you valuable no matter what anyone says. Maria, you're juggling work and family and you're doing a great job at both. Be proud of yourself." Riley looked at each of her co-workers and gave them words of encouragement. She could see that her words meant a lot to them. In a month of working with Marcus, no one had received any positive feedback or recognition. Marcus was furious that Riley was taking attention away from him. Enough with the goodbye speeches. "Get out of here before I call security." "I'm leaving," Riley said. "But before I go, I want everyone to remember something important." She turned to face the whole group. "You are all good people who deserve to be treated with respect. You work hard, you care about customers, and you try to do the right thing. Don't let anyone convince you that you're not valuable." "Get out," Marcus shouted at the top of his lungs. Riley walked toward the door, but she stopped and turned around one more time. "Oh, and Marcus," she said with a slight smile, "you might want to check your email tomorrow morning. I have a feeling you're going to receive some interesting messages." Marcus looked confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing important," Riley said innocently. "Just a feeling I have." She walked out of the customer service department and headed toward the elevators. Behind her, she could hear Marcus trying to regain control of the situation. "Everyone back to work," Marcus was saying. "The show is over. We have phones to answer and customers to serve." But Riley could tell that something had changed in the room. Her co-workers had seen someone stand up to Marcus and refuse to be intimidated. They had heard someone tell them they were valuable and deserving of respect. As Riley waited for the elevator, she felt a mix of emotions. She was angry about how Marcus had treated her and her co-workers. She was sad to leave people she cared about in such a toxic environment, but she was also excited about what would happen next. The elevator doors opened and Riley stepped inside. As the doors closed, she pulled out her phone and sent a text message to Sarah. "It's time. Schedule the board meeting for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Make sure all department heads are there. And Sarah, make sure Marcus Thompson is invited too." The elevator descended toward the lobby, carrying Riley away from her undercover mission and toward the moment when she would reclaim her true identity as CEO of Lux Beauty Corp. Marcus Thompson had no idea what was coming for him. He had just fired his own boss, and tomorrow morning, he would learn exactly what that mistake would cost him. Riley smiled as she walked out of the building. Tomorrow would be a very interesting day at Lux Beauty Corp. In the customer service department, workers were trying to get back to normal, but everyone was thinking about what had just happened. For the first time in months, someone had stood up to Marcus and made him look foolish. Janet stared at her computer screen, but she wasn't really working. She was thinking about Riley's words and wondering if things could ever really change. Marcus sat in his office, feeling victorious, but also strangely unsettled. Something about Riley's final comment bothered him, but he couldn't figure out what she had meant about checking his email. He had no idea that his career at Lux Beauty Corp would be over in less than 12 hours. Riley sat in her car in the Lux Beauty Corp parking lot for several minutes after being fired. She needed a moment to process what had just happened and prepare for what came next. Her month-long undercover investigation was over, but the real work was just beginning. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found Sarah's number. Her assistant would be shocked to hear that the CEO had just been fired from her own company, but Sarah would also understand what needed to happen next. The phone rang twice before Sarah answered. "Rihanna, how did the investigation go today? You sound different." "Sarah, I need you to listen carefully," Riley said, using her real name and real voice for the first time in weeks. "Marcus Thompson just fired me." There was silence on the other end of the line for several seconds. "He did what?" Sarah finally asked. "How is that even possible?" He gave me an impossible task designed to make me fail, then fired me in front of the entire team for not completing it, Riley explained. He has no idea who he just fired. This is unbelievable, Sarah said. What do you want to do? Schedule an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. sharp. I want all department heads there, plus the regional managers and HR director. And Sarah, make sure Marcus Thompson gets an invitation. Should I tell him what the meeting is about? Just say it's an urgent company-wide policy discussion. Don't give him any details. Consider it done, Sarah said. Are you coming back to your office now? Riley looked up at the building where she had spent the last month pretending to be someone else. Not tonight. I need some time to think about everything I learned. But Sarah, I want you to do something else for me. What do you need? Contact our legal department. I want them to review all the documentation I gathered about Marcus's behavior. We need to make sure we handle his termination properly to avoid any legal problems. I'll call them right away, Sarah assured her. Rihanna, are you okay? This must have been really difficult. Riley thought about Janet's tears, Kevin's fear, and Lisa quitting after being bullied. She thought about good workers being treated like they didn't matter, and customers being ignored when they had real problems. I'm angry, Sarah, but I'm also glad I did this. I learned things about my company that I never would have discovered any other way. What kind of things? The problems are bigger than just Marcus. We have bad managers in other departments too. The toxic culture has spread further than I realized. So what's the plan? Tomorrow morning I'm going to fire Marcus Thompson in front of everyone who matters. Then I'm going to announce new policies and training programs to fix the culture problems throughout the company. After hanging up with Sarah, Riley drove home to her apartment. She needed to prepare for tomorrow's board meeting. But first she wanted to review all the notes she had taken during her undercover month. She spread her notebook pages across her dining table and began organizing them into categories: management abuse, policy violations, customer service failures, workplace harassment, and financial waste. The evidence against Marcus was overwhelming. But as she read through her notes, Riley also saw evidence of problems in other departments. She had overheard conversations about warehouse safety violations, accounting overtime abuse, and marketing managers stealing credit for creative work. Riley realized that fixing her company would require more than just firing one bad manager. She would need to implement new training programs, update policies, and create better systems for workers to report problems without fear of retaliation. She worked late into the night, preparing a presentation for the board meeting. She wanted to show not just what was wrong, but also how to fix it. The next morning, Riley woke up early and put on her best business suit. After a month of wearing simple clothes and pretending to be a temporary worker, it felt strange to dress like a CEO again. She arrived at the office building at 7:30 a.m., 30 minutes before the board meeting. Sarah was already there, having arrived early to set up the conference room. Good morning, boss, Sarah said with a smile. It's good to have you back. It's good to be back, Riley replied. Is everything ready for the meeting? The conference room is set up, and I've confirmed that everyone on your list will be there, including Marcus Thompson. How did he react when you called him? He seemed confused about why he was being invited to a board meeting, but he said he would be there. Riley walked into the conference room and tested the presentation equipment. Everything was working perfectly. In 30 minutes, she would reveal the truth about what had been happening in her company. At 7:55 a.m., people started arriving for the meeting. The board members came first, followed by department heads and regional managers. Everyone looked curious about why an emergency meeting had been called. Marcus Thompson arrived exactly at 8 a.m. He was wearing his most expensive suit and had styled his hair carefully. He probably thought this meeting was an opportunity to impress important people. Marcus looked around the conference room and seemed surprised by how many senior executives were there. He took a seat near the middle of the long table, trying to look important and confident. Good morning, everyone, Sarah announced. Thank you all for being here on short notice. Ms. Winters will be with us in just a moment. Marcus looked confused. He didn't recognize the name Ms. Winters and wondered who this person was. At exactly 8 a.m., the conference room door opened. Everyone turned to see who was entering. Riley walked into the room wearing a professional navy blue suit, her hair styled in the confident way she always wore it as CEO. She looked completely different from the humble temporary worker who had been fired the day before. Marcus stared at her in shock. His mouth fell open and his face went pale. This couldn't be happening. The temporary worker he had fired was walking into a board meeting like she owned the place. "Good morning, everyone," Riley said confidently as she walked to the head of the conference table. "Thank you for coming to this emergency meeting." Marcus's mind was racing. This had to be some kind of mistake. Maybe Riley had a twin sister who worked at the company. Maybe this was just a coincidence. But as Riley took her seat at the head of the table, the seat reserved for the most important person in the room, Marcus began to realize that something was very wrong. "For those of you who don't know me," Riley continued, looking directly at Marcus, "my name is Rihanna Winters, and I'm the CEO and founder of Lux Beauty Corp." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The temporary worker he had been bullying for a month was actually his boss. The woman he had fired yesterday was the person who could fire him. Marcus felt like he might throw up. His hands started shaking and sweat began forming on his forehead. Every mean thing he had said, every cruel action he had taken, every time he had humiliated Riley in front of other workers, she remembered all of it. "Mr. Thompson," Riley said, her voice calm and professional, "you look surprised. Is everything all right?" Marcus tried to speak, but no words came out. He opened and closed his mouth several times, looking like a fish out of water. "I understand your confusion," Riley continued. "Yesterday, you fired someone you knew as Riley Waters, a temporary customer service worker. Today, you're meeting Rihanna Winters, the CEO of this company. You're probably wondering how this is possible." The other people in the room were starting to understand what was happening. Some of them looked shocked, others looked confused, and a few looked like they were trying not to smile. "The answer is simple," Riley explained. "For the past month, I've been working undercover in my own company to investigate complaints about workplace culture and management practices." Marcus finally found his voice. You can't be. This is impossible." "I assure you, Mr. Thompson, it's completely possible, and it's been very educational." Riley opened her laptop and began her presentation. On the screen behind her, a title appeared: "Undercover Investigation Results, Customer Service Department." Marcus stared at the screen in horror. She had been documenting everything. Every mistake he had made, every time he had been cruel or unfair, every moment when he had shown his true character. It was all recorded. "Over the past month," Riley continued, "I witnessed systematic workplace harassment, policy violations, customer service failures, and management practices that go against everything this company stands for." She clicked to the next slide, which showed a list of specific incidents with dates and times. Marcus recognized several of them immediately. "Mr. Thompson," Riley said, "would you like to explain to the board why you fired a customer service representative yesterday for failing to complete a task that would normally require 2 full days of work?" Marcus couldn't think of any explanation that would make him look good. The task was important. The task was impossible," Riley said firmly. "You designed it to make me fail so you could justify firing me. This is just one example of the toxic management style I observed in your department." She clicked through several more slides, each one detailing different aspects of Marcus's poor leadership. The board members and department heads looked increasingly concerned as they learned about the problems in the customer service department. The conference room fell completely silent after Riley announced Marcus Thompson's termination. The only sound was the quiet hum of the air conditioning and Marcus's heavy breathing as he sat frozen in his chair. Riley let the silence continue for a few moments, allowing everyone to process what they had just witnessed. The other executives around the table looked shocked, confused, and in some cases, impressed by what their CEO had just revealed. "Security is already waiting outside," Sarah announced quietly from her position near the door. Marcus finally found his voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. This can't be legal. You can't fire me like this. I have rights." "Mr. Thompson," Riley replied calmly, "you're absolutely right about having rights, which is why our legal department has already reviewed all the documentation from my investigation. Every action I'm taking today is completely within company policy and employment law." She gestured to a woman sitting near the end of the table. "Jennifer, would you please explain the legal situation to Mr. Thompson?" Jennifer Adams, the company's head of legal affairs, opened a folder in front of her. "Mr. Thompson, your termination is based on documented violations of company policy. including workplace harassment, misuse of company funds, and creating a hostile work environment. We have detailed records of these violations spanning the past month. Marcus's face went from pale to bright red. You tricked me. You lied about who you were. That's entrapment. Actually, Jennifer continued, undercover investigations by company owners are completely legal. Ms. Winters was observing the natural behavior of management in her own company. No laws were broken. Riley stood up and walked closer to Marcus. You're right that I wasn't honest about my identity, but everything else I did was completely genuine. I answered phones, helped customers, and followed all the same rules as every other worker. The only thing I observed was how you chose to treat people when you thought no one important was watching. Marcus realized that arguing wasn't going to help him. His shoulders slumped in defeat. But I have a question for you, Marcus, Riley continued. When you fired me yesterday, you said I was incompetent, disrespectful, and not a good fit for the company. Do you still think that's true? Marcus couldn't answer. Everyone in the room was staring at him, waiting to see what he would say. How could he call his own CEO incompetent? How could he say that the founder of the company wasn't a good fit? I didn't know, Marcus stammered. No, you didn't know who I was, Riley agreed. But you knew who Riley Waters was. You knew she was a worker trying to do her best. You knew she stood up for her coworkers when they were treated unfairly. You knew she cared about customer service and wanted to help people. Riley walked back to the head of the table and looked around at all the executives, and that's exactly the kind of employee this company needs. Someone who cares about doing the right thing, even when it's difficult. Someone who speaks up when they see problems. Someone who puts customers and coworkers before their own comfort. She clicked to the next slide in her presentation, which showed photos of the customer service team. Let me tell you about the real heroes in our customer service department. Janet Morrison has been with us for 8 years. She knows our products better than anyone and has helped thousands of customers solve their problems. Under Mr. Thompson's management, she was made to feel worthless and incompetent. Riley clicked to a photo of Kevin. Kevin Chen joined us 6 months ago and quickly became one of our best phone agents. He genuinely cares about helping customers and works hard every day. Mr. Thompson assigned him only the most difficult customers and never gave him any recognition for his good work. She showed more photos of workers from the department. Maria Rodriguez is a single mother who manages to excel at her job while raising 2 children. Lisa Patterson was a promising new employee who quit after 1 week because she couldn't handle the constant criticism and intimidation. Riley turned back to Marcus. These are good people who deserved better leadership. Instead, they got a manager who bullied them, took credit for their work, and made them dread coming to work every day. The regional manager, David Kim, spoke up for the first time. Rihanna, I had no idea things were this bad in customer service. Marcus's department always had good performance numbers. The numbers looked good because the workers are talented and dedicated, Riley replied. But Marcus was driving away good employees and creating a toxic environment that would have eventually destroyed the department's performance. She clicked to a slide showing employee turnover statistics. Since Marcus became manager 3 years ago, the customer service department has had 40% higher turnover than any other department. We've lost dozens of good workers, and it costs us thousands of dollars to recruit and train replacements. The HR director, Patricia Wells, looked shocked. I never connected those patterns to management issues. I thought it was just normal turnover. That's part of the problem, Riley said. We haven't been paying attention to the warning signs. High turnover, employee complaints, and poor morale should have triggered an investigation long ago. Marcus tried one more time to defend himself. The workers never complained to me about anything. Riley laughed bitterly. Of course they didn't complain to you. They were afraid of you. I watched you threaten people's jobs whenever they questioned anything you did. She clicked to a slide showing quotes from her notebook. Let me read some of the things you said during my month in your department. To Janet. Maybe you're not as smart as you think you are. To Kevin. If you can't follow simple rules, maybe you're not smart enough for this job. To Lisa. Maybe you're not cut out for this kind of work. Each quote made Marcus sink lower in his chair. And to me, you said, you're exactly the kind of employee this company doesn't need. Riley paused and looked around the room. The irony is that you were right about one thing, Marcus. This company doesn't need employees like you described. But you were describing yourself, not Riley Waters. Security guards appeared at the conference room door. Marcus knew his time was up. Mr. Thompson, Riley said formally, please clean out your office under security supervision. Your access to company systems has already been revoked and your final paycheck will be processed according to company policy. Marcus stood up slowly, his face red with embarrassment and anger. As he walked toward the door, he stopped and turned back to Riley. You think you're so smart, he said bitterly, but you don't understand what it's like to manage difficult people every day. Sometimes you have to be tough. Riley looked at him with a mixture of sadness and disappointment. Marcus, being tough and being cruel are two different things. A good manager challenges people to do their best work. A bad manager destroys people's confidence and makes them afraid to try. You'll see, Marcus said as the security guards moved closer. Those workers will walk all over you if you're too soft. Maybe, Riley replied, but I'd rather be walked on than be someone who walks on others. Marcus left the conference room with security, and everyone could hear his footsteps echoing down the hallway as he was escorted out of the building for the last time. After he was gone, Riley addressed the remaining executives. Now we need to talk about how to fix the problems I discovered. This isn't just about one bad manager. I found evidence of similar issues in other departments throughout the company. For the next hour, Riley presented her findings and recommendations. She proposed new management training programs, better systems for reporting workplace problems, and regular employee satisfaction surveys. I want every manager in this company to understand that their job is to help employees succeed, not to intimidate them into submission, Riley announced. David Kim raised his hand. What about the customer service department? They'll need a new manager immediately. I'm promoting Janet Morrison to interim manager, Riley said. She has the knowledge, experience, and respect of her coworkers. We'll provide her with management training and support. Patricia Wells took notes as Riley outlined new HR policies. We're also implementing an open-door policy where any employee can bring concerns directly to senior management without fear of retaliation. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes as they discussed implementation, timelines, and budget requirements for the changes. Finally, Riley wrapped up the presentation. I want to be clear about something, she said, looking around the table at all the department heads and managers. What I discovered in customer service could be happening anywhere in our company. I'm putting everyone on notice that this kind of toxic management will not be tolerated. She paused to let that sink in. But I'm also here to support managers who want to do better. If you're struggling with leadership challenges, ask for help. If you see problems in other departments, report them. If you're not sure how to handle a difficult situation, let's discuss it together. The meeting ended with assignments for each department head to assess their own management practices and report back within 2 weeks. As people filed out of the conference room, several executives approached Riley to thank her for her investigation and express support for the changes. That was brave, David Kim said, and necessary. I'm sorry we didn't catch these problems sooner.